there guys, it's Joey, and I wanted to talk about something as part of the Healing Witch ongoing series. I thought originally it was going to be like a month, and apparently not. Apparently healing is a long lifetime process, and there are things that I still want to talk about, I still want to feel out, I still want to discuss with you, so we're going to just carry on doing it as long as it feels relevant and, you know, true and necessary, I guess. So today's topic is kind of an offshoot of the invalidation topic that I did last week, and this week is chasing praise, like why we do it, how it's damaging, particularly in like spiritual realms or spiritual journeys, paths, things of that nature, and healing on through. And I think it's kind of topical for me, and it kind of really sort of blew me away a little bit. So I actually shared, it's a Facebook meme or quote, and it goes along the lines of, you know, keep shining, do your very best, even if you don't receive any praise for it. It was along those lines, that's not it exactly. And it really made me sit down and think about it, and I was like, how many of us chase praise, you know, with regards to spiritual paths and or lives in general, and why do we do this? And looking for this outside validation, basically, of who we are, of the way we practice. And I mean, it's pretty rife in sort of social media and things. Even this morning there was this post, this meme shared, and it was 10 signs you're a basic witch, and I was like, really? Like, somebody put together a judgmental list that if you are basic based on these things, and like a lot of people were taking them in good humour, and some of them I can kind of understand that it's a bit, you know, like the first one was like you only read 3 pages of Book of Shadows books and stuff, but other things was like you don't have a Book of Shadows, you have your iPhone. And I was thinking, this is the modern age. Just because you might keep information online doesn't make it any less valid. And if you like Halloween, then you're basic. I actually responded to this one. I was like, if loving Halloween makes you basic, I will basic on all day. And then there was other things like if you like horror movies, and I was like, how has that got anything to do with anything? I was like, wow. I was just a little sigh rant, but that, like, a lot of people like, oh come on, you know, most of us are having a pentacle tattoo. Now I don't have any tattoos, but there you go. I was like, it kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying about invalidation last week, but praise seeking is kind of an offshoot of invalidation. And I was thinking about this to myself. I was thinking, how many of us remember the very first sort of award system, stickers usually, that they got for good work in school, in primary school, in like the youngest school? Because I can remember mine in vivid detail. They were all different coloured stars with faces on them, like, you know, like even like anime style faces, if you like. And I remember those stars to this day, and I remember wanting them as a kid, and like working really hard on my poetry or whatever it was, because I really wanted some of those stars. And I remember at one point I managed to get hold of paper with star borders on it. So that's how deeply ingrained it was as a little kid, like these stars around the outside, and I coloured them all in as part of the poetry thing and got an extra star for doing it. It's just and I think the problem is that mentality stays with us. Like we don't really realise it, but I think the mentality where we want people to praise what we're doing becomes so deeply entrenched in who we are, and it's not all to do with conditioning. I mean, it's the conditioning is there from being very little, like, oh, when you've done well you get this gold sticker or whatever, and that feeling of pleasure and that feeling of self-worth being boosted when you get that little nugget of praise. And I think at least in my circumstance, those of us who have gone through a difficult or traumatizing or abusive family life as we've grown up have found the praise lacking. And I know as a kid, I would, seek praise outside of the house, like teachers in particular, because I just wasn't getting it at home ever. It was nothing I ever did was good enough, basically. And if did you get an A? If not, why not? If you did, who else got an A? Oh well, someone else got an A. What was their percentage? Did you get the highest percentage? If not, not good enough. And if you did, meh. Literally meh. And it's all kinds of pressure, which isn't really fair on young minds or indeed older minds. And I was thinking about how this sort of tradition, social custom of praise is so hampering. And I actually shared today on the Starry Eyed Facebook page this really good blog post about how to not care what others think. And it's not in the usual vein of not caring what others think where it gets aggressive with it, because I think a lot of the time when you see posts and whatever to do with not caring what other people think, it's like, F them in the air, you don't really care, F you, I don't care what you effing think. And basically that is still caring what other people think, because you're portraying like this aggressive, sort of self-defensive persona in order to like rile other people up that, your opinion is above theirs and you don't care. So actually you do care, because otherwise you wouldn't be so angry about it. And this post that I shared, this blog post, was really, really wonderful, because it was taking on the fact that you don't have to tell yourself that you cannot feel the need, that you just have to recognize that people have hurt you, and rather than allowing that to fester and not allowing it to seep into your soul, basically just acknowledging that it's happened, and then take a look at the reasons for it happening, take a look at the reasons you're reacting that way, and then as a process working through it. And eventually you'll come to a place where perhaps it does hurt you initially, but you don't allow it to fester, and eventually you'll come to a place where you just don't react to certain situations in the same way anymore. And it's talked about being positive but firm, and this is how I feel about it, without being aggressive or getting into fights about it, because it's not worth it. And so I shared that because I thought it was really good, and I was like, oh, that's some advice sharing. We're all about the advice sharing right now. If you haven't had a look at the competition, get yourself entered. And I really loved that. I really loved that vibe, that advice. And when I was sat there thinking about how we praise seek in life from other people in our spiritualities, and we look up to certain individuals, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with looking up to certain individuals. I think the problem comes when you are placing your self-worth in the hands of other people, or that you try and sort of dehumanize anybody who is sharing advice, whatever. And some people might place people on pedestals, and people are human. We all have human reactions, humans failings, and we've just got to realize that praise seeking from other people isn't going to improve who we are as individuals. And some people sort of thrive off other people coming to them for praise, and it can become like a toxic cycle of putting yourself in the hands of other people and not loving yourself for who you are, but rather getting a emotional high off being praised for every little thing you do. And it's basically looking outside of oneself for affirmation. Oh, this thing I did today was great. Now, it's difficult in some ways, because it is nice to be complimented, by people. It can feel really good to receive compliments. And I think it's a personal level of realizing that you are putting this out over and over and over and over again in order to fishing line, compliments, positive affirmations, and things of that nature. And when you're really doing that, you're not working on yourself, you're not walking a spiritual path, you are looking outside of yourself for validation. And this is how it ties into validation, because this, rather than being, people outside invalidating who we are, is basically giving the power over to other people to validate who we are. And it's basically never going to work, because people are never going to praise you 100% of the time, even people who love you. That people may be critical, people might say the wrong thing that you weren't hoping to hear, and suddenly, if your validation is all coming from outside, then it kind of crushes inwards and you start falling apart a little bit because you got some negative feedback. Someone wasn't who you thought they were. Someone wasn't very nice to you today. And let's face it, we're all human beings. Maybe your friend wasn't nice to you today because they've got PMS. Maybe they've got something terrible going on in their personal life. And rather than wanting to validate who you are, they needed a friend. And, things can blow up that way. And it can be really, really damaging to your relationships if you're constantly seeking praise from outside of yourself. And that's because you've kind of lost a sense of self. You've kind of lost your self-belief. And I was thinking about this. I was like, we all do this, I think. I can't think that, even the most confident, self-assured person in the world hasn't done this or hasn't overcome this to get to the being self-assured. Because, there's a difference between self-assured and arrogant, for example. And that's... Arrogance is usually being blowhard in the face of not actually fully believing in yourself. Pretending that you do to the point where you don't give a about anybody else, but that's going too far in the other direction. It's like, well, okay, you believe in yourself, but you don't believe in anybody else to the point where you're not being very friendly to anyone else, and you're not allowing them space to be, space to exist, coexist, because they're not you. And that is the other end of the scale of the praise seeking, where you're like, I don't need nobody else's praise. Like, okay, but you might, be nice to somebody else as well. Maybe. And the problem with this is basically a tilting scale, and the balance aspect of things, the balance aspect of everything, and as far as I'm concerned, isn't like this. Balance in all things is a tilting scale, and things tip either way, and it's all dependent very largely on the individual as far as I'm concerned. And excuse me, I need a drink of water. So what's healthy, generally speaking, and if you don't know what's healthy, then that's shadow work that needs to address what elements of looking outside of oneself are healthy and what elements of looking outside of oneself are not. Are you only feeling your self-worth as long as you're surrounded by people telling you positive things? Can you take criticism? Can you take on board when somebody tries to be honest with you and it's not exactly what you wanted to hear? I find that most people cannot usually get along with that, and I have a hard time of it, because I'm not going to lie to you to make you feel better. If I really think that further down the line you're going to be in trouble, and I should have just told you the truth in the first place. I don't like the whole, lie to make you feel better if it can have serious consequences later on. I mean, I'm not going to tell somebody you look bad in a certain outfit, for example. I might be like, oh, I prefer you in colour or something, or things along that line. I might try and sort of move around it a little bit, but generally speaking, I don't think it's a good thing to be praising somebody, and this is kind of on the other side of the fence, if that praise either isn't merited, isn't warranted, is damaging in some way, or is just fake. It's just downright a lie to just praise for the sake of praising. I feel like the robot off Futurama, praise for the sake of praising. And it's just not helpful to ourselves, to others around us. And spiritual practice is all about one's personal journey, one personal belief, the way one feels our way through the world. And I say many times, there are many spiritual paths, many ways up the mountain, like Flora puts it. And basically, I have schoolboys looking at me through the window. Well, that will be their topic of conversation, wondering what the hell I'm doing. There's a woman sat on the floor with a video recorder. What did we just see? Right. Completely flustered now. Our spiritual paths are basically our own journeys, and we have to become comfortable in our own skin. And to be honest with you, what basically it means to be on a spiritual journey is to basically be looking to improve oneself, as well as one's situation, and seek one's higher purpose and seek connection to spirits and gods, depending on the individual and what they are working towards. Now, this is a journey. Some people call it a journey of self-enlightenment. If that's a little bit too new agey for you, then it's, a journey of witchcraft. It's a journey of faith. It's a celebration of the world and your part in it. It's knowing that, I love that, the quote, be noble for you are made of stars, but be humble for you are made of earth. And finding that balance within oneself and not seeking praise from other people who ultimately are people. I have addressed this in many videos to do with many different things, but basically we are all human beings. Prick us, do we not bleed? I don't know what that was. That's just bad Shakespeare. Or that's a Shakespearean head toss. That's legit. Right, okay, anyway. See, I talk absolute nonsense, and some people really don't like me talking absolute nonsense, but it's just part of my soul and tough, basically. And you have to arrive at a point where you get that, and we talked about this in the invalidation video, where you're okay with you. And you don't need constant praise, you don't need to be worshipped on a lily pad on high, on a pedestal. Nobody should want that, to be honest with you, because it's just exhausting sounding to who's perfect? Well, nobody's perfect. We're all human beings. I'd much rather interact on a human to human level, because witchcraft is deep down in the mud type stuff. And I've talked about this. This was actually on one of my essays that I did for it was Bad Witch, I think it's now just Witch, and it's about witchcraft being in the mud, getting your fingers in the mud, getting the dirt under your nails, really feeling out what's going, accepting you're going to be having tough times on your spiritual path. You're going to get broken, basically, and you're going to build yourself back up, and you're going to have tough times, you're going to have good times, you're going to have times where you feel on top of the world, and you're going to have times where you feel like poo. And at those times, a little bit of ego soothing from the outside world might help you, but you can't become reliant on that to make you feel better about who you are or your situation. You have to just, tell yourself you've got this, tell yourself, toughen up a little bit, and seek to understand your reactions to certain situations and why you react to praise in certain ways and how that's not really helpful for you. Another thing is, I think we need to learn to praise ourselves and really listen to the praise that we're giving ourselves, because I think too many of us are so self-detrimental that we are our own worst enemies. We are our worst critics. We are hard on ourselves. And all the fellow Virgos out there, give me a hand raise, because basically Virgos are the worst at this. Although the other earth signs, Capricorn and Taurus, come sit with me, because we all know what this is about. All the other star signs do it too, of course, but I'm telling you that the earth signs are harder on themselves than they are on anybody else. And it's really detrimental. And we have to learn to praise ourselves and not feel bad about it. Because like I've done this, and I'm sure other people have. You're like, that felt awesome, I feel good about myself. Oh crap, I'm glad nobody's around to see me being so full of myself. And then that process right there is so damaging. If you've done something awesome, be proud of yourself in the minute. You don't have to gloat, you don't have to rub other people's faces in it, because then you're taking it to a negative place. But you can give yourself a high five if you want, or you can just be proud of who you are, proud of what you've achieved. You don't need to be putting it out there in social media or, you know, personal conversations or whatever, time after time after time after time, because people are going to get sick of it, and people are going to like start getting to the point where they don't want to praise what you're doing, because that's all you're looking for. It's like constant fishing, and people feel it's ingenuine to keep giving you that praise when you're seeking it so proactively. And at least I do. I get to the point where I'm like, you either believe in yourself and what you're doing, or you don't. And if you don't, there's nothing I can do to make you believe in yourself anymore, because it's basically like putting pennies in a black hole. It's just whoop, flying on through. It doesn't make a difference if you don't believe in yourself. You have to give yourself that solid foundation. And that starts with being nicer to yourself, praising yourself, and allowing yourself to be the affirmation that you need, rather than seeking it from outside sources. So I'm not going to tell you that I have mastered this process, because I haven't. I think all of us do need a little praise from time to time from outside of ourselves, just to feel appreciated, whether it be by family, or friends, or whomever. It's nice to feel appreciated, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you can never expect a compliment, or you can never expect praise from an outside source again, because that's just going too far in the other direction. I don't need your praise. Again, Shakespearean head shake. And that's going to also be one of the thumbnails, is me going, or me with my head turned right round, which kind of looks like The Exorcist, probably on a... That's going to get some haters going. Right, okay. So praise yourself, feel better about who you are. Don't give up. Don't beat yourself up with a stick to the point where you're so low that you don't know how to be your own friend. Expect good things for yourself, and when things don't go right, don't get into the self-blame game to the point where you are harming yourself. Look about how you can readdress the situation, look how you can readjust. Because as Mama Morgan always tells me, she's like, come on, get up, reevaluate, reassess, what can we do? And this is how my brain often works, especially when things are difficult. It's like, right, what can I do? What can I change? What can I do today? What can I do in the next minute? What can I do in the next hour? How can I fix it? How can I work it? How can, what needs doing? Where can I go? Who can I call? And it becomes very much like a checklist of not accountability, but things you can do, and stop focusing on the things that you can't do and the things that you can't control, because you can't control what other people think about you, which is one of the points on that blog post. You have to get to the point where you just stop trying to control how other people see you. And because there's this gorgeous quote from Dita Von Teese, which is, you can be the juiciest peach ever, the most succulent, beautiful, juiciest peach, and there's someone out there that hates peaches. And it's just so true. And it takes time. It truly takes time and going through it to learn to not allow everybody's opinions to sort of border onto you, whether it be a praise thing or an invalidation thing like we talked about before. But to be honest, praise seeking is something that we do very proactively in some cases, and trying to affirm who we are as witches, as spiritual beings. as human beings by looking outside of ourselves for affirmation and positive reinforcement that this is who we're meant to be. And nobody can tell you who you're meant to be. You just got to figure it out. So I thought I would just sit and waffle on about that a little bit. And anyway, I hope I made some kind of sense, and many blessings.